everybody. Tom Tortolani here. Welcome to our product update. I'm joined today by Sherry Dizon from our customer Landmark Builders.
All right. So I'd like to just do a quick company update for Safe Site Check-In. Since we started the business last summer, we've grown steadily over the months. We're up to about 100,000 check-ins per month across 500 sites in US and Canada. And though we originally started the company as a solution response to COVID in the construction industry, we've really put a lot of improvements into the software based on feedback from a lot of customers like Sherry to really put capabilities in there that go well beyond just a COVID-only solution. And we'll touch upon some of that today. So with that, I'm going to ask Sherry to just do a brief overview of her company and talk a little bit about how they initially came to find out about Safe Site Check-In. So Sherry, welcome again to the session. Why don't you go ahead and just walk us through a little bit of an overview?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm with Landmark Builders. We're a general contractor located in the Bay Area. We started in 2004. Most of the work we do, it's all commercial, life science, bioscience. We started looking around for something because we were, like everybody else, having positive COVID tests on our job sites. And we just wanted a way to get a handle on it and to make the owners feel safer and eliminate the long lines that we were having with people checking in with the process we were currently using. So we did some research and we came up with SafeSite. And currently we have 9 job sites that are using SafeSite. We have some of them that are logging in over about 125 people a day. Some are less. Very easy to use. SafeSite was very easy to work with. They've customized a lot of stuff for us. With our questions are customized. We only have 4 of them, but we tried to make it pretty easy for the people that are checking in. And if there's a problem, when you check in, you get a green X. And once they get a green X, then the person from our company will give them a different colored band. We use different wristbands every day. And if they get a red X, then we have it set up so the superintendent is getting either a email or a text message. And sometimes you're not there when they check in, so they'll call them and go track that person down, see why they failed, mostly because they don't read the questions correctly. And then we take care of that. They get their wristband and everybody goes to work.
That's an interesting angle to it. We hadn't really talked about that much, Sherry. I've seen some of our other customers do the same thing. They'll have like a station at the entrance to the job site. They'll go through the check-in process, the Safe Site Check-In. Some of them were also adding the temperature scan as part of that. And if they passed the temperature scan, what they were then doing is actually giving wristbands to just kind of make it easy for people managing the site to see very quickly that they actually went through the proper check-in process. So is this something that you're doing at all your locations or just some of them?
We do this at some of them. And now that more people are getting the vaccination, some of them walk in with their vaccination card and they think that's good enough, but they still have to go in through SafeSite, do the check-in process, because then we have the official record of their name, company that they work for. And we use this now for COVID check-in, but we can see the need going because COVID, it's not going away, obviously, but people are, we don't have, it's been 2 months since we've had an outbreak on our job sites, where before we were having probably 6 of them a week. So it's just nice. We're going to continue to use this even beyond COVID because it helps us track who's on our job site. And then our superintendents compare it to their daily reports. And it's really nice.
Right. That's the thing we've seen over time, that as people start to use the application, they realize very quickly that, first, not having to have a kind of a paper log that people sign in, just eliminating the paper is a good time savings. And then because the system captures all this electronically, you've got much more accurate information that you can also go back and look on. So we have over the months put in capabilities not only to just answer some COVID questions, but also you get real-time visibility to who's there when they came into the site. We also added the ability to also check out also configuration points, like letting a visitor actually identify what activities they plan. I know when you and I and some of your team originally talked, the whole process around daily reporting, daily logs, you were really kind of looking as a way to streamline that and really verify the accuracy of what was being done. So as I recall, the process that you have, like a lot of our customers do, is every day you need to record a log of what subcontractors were there, how many workers were there, perhaps even how many hours they were. And having a system like ours that can capture and help verify that is a big value add.
Correct. We actually, a few days ago, one of our subcontractors, one of our MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing subcontractors, wanted to start working overtime on the weekends. And they said that, they had all these people that were on the job, but they just weren't getting the job done. So they came and met with the superintendent, and he actually showed them the log so that they can see. And I guess they realized after talking to us, they really didn't have that many people on our job, given the size of it. So now they're going to work overtime, but it's on their dime, not ours.
That's a good point. We've heard other stories from customers where they also use the system to reconcile any claims by subcontractors about how many people were there. I think we had one customer that said that they had saved in 1 month about $50,000 just because there was a discrepancy between the subcontractor who they thought they actually had there and who was actually showing up. So, these are just hard dollars being recaptured by a solution that's very cost effective using safe site check-in.
Yeah, another thing that we use it for is I try and look at the bigger job sites every other day, and I know who the subs are on the job. And then if I constantly see a couple people that are checking in, and it turns out that they're working directly for the owner, not for us. But for the reason we want to know is anybody that's working on that site when we want their insurance. So then I give it to the person in our office that handles the certificates of insurance for the subs, and she goes back and gets those. But normally we wouldn't know because people are coming and going all the time on the sites. And it's really hard, as you guys know, to track on the bigger jobs, but this has been very helpful for that.
Yeah, precisely. So I'm going to talk a bit about a product update, and Sherry, as I go through this, you're more than welcome to add any color to how it's kind of improved your ability to use the product. But what we focused on since we've done our last webinar is capabilities in the software to really improve the quality of data that's being captured through the application. Because as we've talked, the idea is that you can really use this as a supplement to the daily log reporting. Having more accurate information being captured just reduces the amount of things like people miskeying in company name, having 5 versions of the same contractor. You've got to figure out what's going on there. I think you also had cases of when visitors were checking in, you had just people putting in their first name. So you have 10 Joes in the log you're looking at, and you really couldn't actually tell who that person was. So we put things in there like full name validation, the ability to have even more contact information. I think in your case, you were saying it was set up so they could put an address in, but were they really putting in their street address, their city, their state postal code for contact tracing? And the system is totally customizable. So you decide how much of this information you really want to capture beyond, the basic, the name, the phone number, the email type of thing. And then the other big thing was actually the ability for you to put in, for example, a list of all your subcontractors into our system. So when the visitor checks in, they're no longer typing in the name of the company, and perhaps you got 10 different versions of the same name of the subcontractor. And now they can actually pick from a list that you provide. The end result is actually can check in quicker, and it makes the reporting through our system, much more accurate. You're only looking at one version of a name of a subcontractor. They're not trying to piece together 5 or 10 different versions of that name, right?
Yeah, that's been probably one of the most helpful upgrades that you've done for us. And when I look at it every other day, if there's a sub that I missed, I just go add them to the list. It's pretty easy. Then it makes it better for when the people are checking in.
Yeah, the other thing we've done, I can't recall if you're taking advantage of this quite yet, is we do have cases where, as you had mentioned earlier, when people check in, they actually go through the questions too quickly, and perhaps they're not paying attention to whether they're answering yes or no, and they're told they're denied access to the site. And so in our application, our customers have different processes for dealing when somebody's told they're denied access. Usually it'll come down to somebody asking that person, what's going on? You answer the question in a way that's a problem. We don't store any of their health information in our system, right? We just don't want to deal with any HIPAA issues. Typically the supervisor, safety officer at the site will ask, what's going on? In some cases, the visitor will say, gee, I actually didn't mean to answer that question that way. And the process then is typically 2 things you can do. One is the visitor will go ahead and rescan and answer the questions the correct way. But the other thing we put in recently was the ability for the supervisor to go directly in there and just modify it from being a denied record to being actually granted. And also being able to do things like put a comment in there as to, why did they change that? or in the case maybe if somebody's been denied access and they actually say, yes, I have a potential, health risk, then sometimes our customers want to document what instructions the on-site personnel gave to that person when they left. It might be, we told them you should go get a health check, COVID test, you should go do this or that. And some of our customers have said they do want to actually document what those people are being told when they don't come on the site. And I'll show this in a few minutes when we go through a demo, but this again gets kind of back to the, having much better data quality, having a system where you can actually audit and view real time, what's going on the job site. The other thing we recently added was the ability to do a checkout. So not only do you capture when the visitor comes in, scans a QR code, for example, that comes into the job site, but you can now also record, where the visitor can actually record a checkout event. The benefit of doing this is that if you want to try to use this more for the daily log reports, where you actually want to try and capture how many hours a particular worker or the subcontractor in aggregate, how many hours they had on a day or a month or a week, then we have that information that captures that. It makes it easy again to reconcile that information. Or perhaps if you're feeding another system like Procore, I think you guys actually use Raken, as I recall, that there's some things we actually do there to let you attach logs directly into Raken just as part of managing it in your daily log, correct?
Correct.
Right.
That's
yeah, go ahead.
That's the sheet where you can take all the 100+ names at the end of the day, and if you need to make changes on it, you can. We don't make very many changes, and then it's downloaded into a PDF and we upload it into Raken, which is what we use for our actual safety program.
Yeah, precisely. And speaking of safety, we've seen in the recent months a lot more interest in safety being not just COVID, but general site safety. So we've had customers ask for being able to do things like, as part of the check-in process, the first time they come into any of your locations, actually putting a video link in the check-in process, where the visitor actually has to open that link, watch perhaps a training video or a safety video that they check the box that says they acknowledge that they've watched that content. We're also looking going forward to also do things like broadcast alerts. So we know who's checked into a site. We've got their contact information, an email, a phone. If something happens on a site that might be an issue, the ability for a site supervisor, safety officer, project manager to actually then broadcast to everybody on that site, hey, something is going on that you need to be aware of. We're looking at continually improving and adding these things in the software as well. What I'd like to do now is go ahead and do a brief demonstration of some of these capabilities. What I am showing you here is what an administrator of our app would see when they're managing the application. Typically within our customer's function, they'll have an administrator who will go into our system, set up a site. It's very easy to do. Literally within a few minutes, you can have a site defined and then have a QR code available for checking in visitors. So in this example here, as a supervisor, I'm signed into the app. I can see that I've got a certain number of sites that are currently active. Active meaning that the visitors can check into the site. We also have a concept of making a site inactive. And when a site is made inactive, what that means is that you and all your people would still have visibility to all of the history of all the check-ins that happened. But in this case, the visitor doesn't actually check into the site anymore. So we know over time, a lot of jobs complete, new jobs start, and we've made our licensing very flexible in order to kind of adapt to that model. If we look at this first site here, what you'll see is the QR code. And the QR code, once you set up a site, you have the ability to then download this poster as a PDF file, print it, both in Spanish and English. And if you also enable the ability to check out, there's also another code that a visitor could also use to check out. Now, as an administrator or a supervisor to actually see a site, you can then actually go in and get a real-time view of all the visitors that have come in. So for example, for today, we just have a couple demo examples here. If you want to go back, let's say for the last 30 days, see that information, you can very quickly see who's been in the site, their time they actually entered. If you enable the checkout feature, you'll see, you can not only see when they came in, but when did they actually say they left the site, and then the ability to get their contact information. So what I'm going to do is through the admin app, I'm going to do a check-in, but you can imagine if somebody had the QR code on their smartphone, they scan it. We built the app so it looks nice on a smartphone. So the typical process would be the user agrees to basically that they're going to provide accurate information. From there, the visitor enters their contact information, and you decide what contact information you want to collect. And so, for example, in this case, previously when I came in, I put my information in. The next time I come in to sign into the app, I don't need to rekey it. But let's say, for example, the person just puts, Joe in, like we were saying originally, and then they try and, check in. Well, the application is actually going to say, you can't check in until you actually give us a full first name and last name, right? So this is what Sherry was talking about earlier, where a lot of visitors were just putting a first name in, made it very difficult to figure out who was actually there. The other thing is in the application for the visiting company, so this, in the example of construction, would be who are all the subcontractors that are coming in. They can either type that in, or in the case of Sherry, what she had done is she actually entered the list of subcontractors into the application. And then when a visitor comes in, they just simply start to type the name of their company in. So for example, if I'm with a window company, I start to type it and I say, okay, I'm with Window Covering Products, right? And this kind of guarantees that when we save the information on our system and you go back and do the log reporting, that you have the exact name of the company that they were with for your records. Now, some cases that, maybe you've got delivery and other people that show up into the site, you can also set up the app. So perhaps if there was a pizza delivery, they're not in the system, but if I say New York Pizza is doing a delivery, I can also add that to the application as I go along. Now, once you get through the contact information, then you have the ability to set up what other information you want to collect. In some cases, our customers are saying, I do want to know what activities they intend to perform when they're on the site. They can look through a list and check it off. You can also search if you have maybe a big list. I know that I'm going to be delivering pizza to the site, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then we take the user through the questions. So these could be any questions you want in the form of a yes or no answer. It could be COVID related, could be anything you want to add to the application. But as I answer these questions, you'll see that this is one that I've actually customized for my business. In this case, are you well today? It could be anything you want. Let's say they answer no, right? The last part is then you want them to agree to abide by certain behaviors when they're on the site. So for example, they'll maintain their 6-foot distancing, they wear a face mask. You can also add to the app any additional things like liability waivers, other documents that you want them to actually read. So here's actually a PDF document that you want them to agree that they've read to and abide by. Then the part with actually watching the videos, right? That this is actually a video link. In this case, we've had some customers say we put together some YouTube videos. We make it very easy to just go ahead and point the app to a YouTube video, and then they basically have to open, in this case, they have to open the link before they're allowed to check in. Once they go through the process, the app is then going to tell them whether they're denied or granted access to the site. In this case, Joe actually answered one of the questions in a way that flags Joe as a potential risk, and they're told, do not enter the site. Now, the app is set up to then send real-time alerts to supervisors, administrators, either text or emails, saying that this particular visitor has an issue. And that's typically the process then where somebody on site will want to identify that visitor and find out, what's going on. I'm going to close this here for a moment. You see then in the real-time log, I may get an alert, but I also see in the real-time log here that this visitor was denied access to the location. One of the things we put in the app now is that the supervisor can now actually go in there and say, well, you know what, they were originally denied, but they were actually granted. The reason why they're going to be granted is because they miskeyed an answer, right? So on the spot, I've said, okay, I'm actually going to tell that visitor they're granted access to the location. And then you've got an audit trail in the system. So over time, if you ever need to go back and look, it'll actually tell you for that visitor that they're originally denied, then somebody changed them to granted. Why did they change it to granted? And then who actually made that change? So I signed into the app. So you got an audit of what was changed, why it was changed, who did it, and when they did it. Pretty cool. Now, the other thing I did want to show is the actual process of checking out, something we recently introduced into the system. So when the visitor scans a QR code, they check in, and then on their device, all the check-ins that they've done over time are recorded. And because I've enabled the ability to check out, what will happen is if you put a checkout QR code at the site, they can scan that, it'll open up the app, or they could simply just open up the app on their own, on their device. And they'll be able to see all the check-ins that they've done on this particular device. And if you've enabled the site to allow a visitor to check out, they simply go into the app and they basically say, I'm confirming that I'm checking out. And if I go back to the admin app, you now see that it's actually recorded their check-in and their checkout event as well, right? So a lot more valuable information you can capture here in terms of the log reporting. I'm going to take a quick moment and just show customizing the app. We've tried to make that as easy as possible for you to do. We have standard information that's already part of the app. And if you don't need to change it, you're good. You can get this thing up and running literally just within minutes. But maybe you don't need to ask them certain questions. It's very easy in the app to say, I don't need to ask them that question. I'm just going to make that inactive. Now, the company information. So in the case of Sherry, for example, she set it up so she's got a list in the app, basically just a cut and paste, for example, of all of the subcontractors that come into the site. So when that visitor checks in, this is the list that they're actually picking from. That part of how they're check into a site. Entry questions, pretty straightforward. Here's our standard list of questions. You can add your own. So in the case of Are You Well Today, this is a question that I added to the app. And then the same with the entry terms, right? In this case, I actually added this term that says I want them to agree that they watched the video. And here you see I've actually got my YouTube video link that I put into the app. And basically this little box says that the user must open the link, actually watch the video before they're actually allowed to check into one of your sites for the very first time. One other thing I'm going to show then related to the check-in, check-out is daily log reporting. So we've actually in the app, let me go back for a moment here, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back in the app. We do have a catalog of a lot of dashboards and reports that show a lot of great information over time, graphs and charts, how many people were in your sites, which sites, what time of the day were they there, what day of the week, that type of information. But we've also got a few new reports that we put in recently, one that we call the Daily Log Report. And what this shows you is for all the visiting companies by day, how many visitors showed up for the day, and then if they were checking in and out, how many hours, in this case, these three visitors worked, from this company on this particular day. And then this is the type of information that makes it very easy to take and use to verify any daily logs you're doing in other products like Procore and Raken, and a couple of variations of the report as well. So here, I'm giving you a nice kind of a view of all the companies that were on site, in this case, particular site number. You can go in there, you very quickly pick your site numbers if you're managing more than one site. And then over time, in this case by day, for the past week, for example, how many hours people are on site, and then how many visitors. This one report you can also then, I was going to go bounce back and forth here, but this other report, you can then also see exactly which visitors were there and what time did they check in and what time did they check out. So just a lot of great information that would capture as part of this overall process, give you that better visibility to the site and kind of reconcile the different hours different visiting companies are doing. All right, so I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to show you all today. Siva from our team, at this point, are there any open questions that you'd like to read that either Sherry and I can respond to before we end the session?
Sure thing. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Sherry, for a really good conversation. First question we have is probably more for Sherry. Do you collect the wristbands you mentioned at the end of the day? And how does that work? Is it everybody complies with it? Is it successful?
We don't collect the wristbands. We have wristbands for every a different color for every day of the week. We started using these before. We started using SafeSite in January. We started these wristbands back last May. It has our company name on it. It was very successful because when you saw people, people could have still had COVID, but people just felt more safe, more comfortable when they saw somebody walking around with the wristband. And if today is blue, and if you easily see somebody wearing orange, then they either haven't gone through the SafeSite process or they have not gotten their wristband. Because we have people checking in as early as 4 in the morning, but our official person at the door doesn't get there till 5:45. So he backtracks to collect or to give out new wristbands to those that have checked in prior to him. But the wristbands have been very successful for us.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's a good question. I was going to say, as a matter of fact, we have one other customer that they do a lot of checking of the wristbands. And actually, if they find a worker has come into the site and they don't have a wristband, they actually tell them they need to go home, pack up your stuff and go home for the day because you didn't follow the right process for coming into the site.
Actually, we don't really have to do that because in the beginning, it was all the other subs were looking. You don't have a wristband on, then they're all pointing at this one person. So it got to be pretty easy with everybody wanting the colored wristband of the day.
Oh, it's your own version of Scarlet Letter.
Yes.
Okay. Next question, let's start with Sherry and then Tom, you can answer this based on your experience with other customers. So when you do workers check out voluntarily or easily at the end of the day on their own, or do you have to do that?
Do
people on the job site, do they check out
No.
easily at the end of the day?
We don't have anybody using the checkout app, and that's mainly because probably 90% of the people that come on our job site, other than owners, architects, they're there working an 8-hour day. Not very many of them just come in to work an hour or two. So we don't currently use the checkout process.
Okay. And so Tom, do others?
Yeah, absolutely. Since we released the feature, probably about 6 weeks ago, we've seen pretty good pickup of that feature set. And the way we set up the app, certainly the visitor on their own device can very quickly tap to check out, as I had shown. But if in some cases the site supervisor at the end of the day also sees that real-time event list, and they can also, if somebody's left and they forgot to check out, they can also check out that user on their behalf as well. So we try to make it easy and flexible and not have to go through too much work to actually force that.
Now, switching gears a little bit, you kind of talked through a bit quickly on how easy it is to customize setup. How long does it take? When, let's say I'm a new customer, I'm starting tomorrow, I have no idea how you guys work, what do you guys do? How long does it take my time? Because for me, to take somebody's time off the field is obviously not something I would like to do. So talk me through the process of initial setup. Let's start with Sherry. How was it for you? How did you do it once you figured out this is what you want to do? And then Tom, as a product owner, how easy is your product to set up, configure, customize, and what does it look like when it's all done? Do I have to spend time fine-tuning it, or how much time do I spend on a monthly basis or a weekly basis?
I can start off and say, when we started with SafeSite, we looked at the questions that were available and we went and customized our own. There's 5 of them. We tried to make it easy. I worked with one of our superintendents and one of the project managers in the office. Between the 3 of us, we came up with the questions. Very easy to type into the system. After a week, we met and we made a few changes, not anything major. A lot of it was based upon feedback when people checked in. But as far as using the SafeSite application, there's the 2 parts. There's the people checking in, and then there's myself as the admin. Very, very easy. One of the superintendents sent me a text yesterday. Can you set me up another license? I looked at the site. I noticed one of our jobs ended, so I inactivated, as Tom showed you. The information is still available, and then I just set up the other license. It's very fast. And what we do is we put together it's Spanish and English. And so we have a template that we sent out to all the superintendents, project managers, and it has the job. We either put a picture of the job or we put the logo of the client we're working for. And then we put our superintendent's name and phone number on that check-in sign-in, because if they're checking in on one end and they have a problem, they can call the superintendent. But it's very quick and very easy. You don't spend a lot of time at all.
And we tried to make the app so easy that adding a brand new site, literally you're just putting in the site name, number, and the address, and you're done, and you get a QR code posted right away. So we've always said our goal was under 60 seconds to make it easy for you to add site. Now, customizing the questions in the app, when you customize the questions, all your sites get those questions. We do also in the app support the ability to customize different questions for different sites. And in that case, then you come to us, we take a look at what you need, and then we help you get that set up. And that, again, is usually a process we can do just a turnaround within an hour, just based on you coming and saying, can you help us get this kind of set up differently for different sites?
So do you have a situation what if I don't have a smartphone? When I have one of those old Nokia phones, then what happens?
We actually run into that quite a bit. And we do one of two things. We try and when there's an error, it's usually not because they're sick. They're just, some of them, it's the learning process as far as reading, but we contact their site foreman and have him deal with it. And the people that have they don't have a smartphone, they either sign in through their foreman or our superintendents, because I always tell our superintendents, I don't want you signing people in because it takes too much time and backs up the line. So either we get their foreman to sign them in, or they figured out a way that they can take, they get a QR scanner. Some of them download that to their phone. But okay, you will run into a situation, because there is quite a few people out there, believe it or not, that still use just the old kind of phones. But try and put it back on the foreman that they work for, and they'll usually take care of it for you. Does that help?
Yeah, we've seen the same type of thing at other sites where perhaps a coworker will then just type in their information for them when they come in.
Okay. Sherry, earlier when you started out, when you were giving overview of your company, you talked about your specialty in life sciences and laboratories and things like that. Are there any unique requirements that you deal with that you use SafeSite check-in for? Do you customize your implementation of SafeSite for any of those requirements? Do you have any? Second, how do your owners or clients do they see do they use this tool as well, or the data from it?
Our owners, not so much, but a lot of the owners that come on the site, we're doing a pretty big job up in South San Francisco. We're doing the interior, and another general is doing the actual building and then the outside. And the subs were making a comparison about a month ago, because they're not using a check-in process, and the line is, you're waiting in line 45 minutes to an hour to get on that site. And they're looking over at us and they're like, why is your line moving so quick? And we said, well, here's what we're doing. And so the owner because the owner owns the building and the tenant improvement part, kind of forced them to, that they had to do something else other than just have people stand in line for their check-in process. We don't customize too much based upon the job we're doing. We basically use most of the same questions. Every now and then the owner will say, hey, can you ask this question? And it's really has nothing to do with COVID or anything, but we go ahead and do it. And then everybody's happy. We've had some clients and owners who have asked us, do you have to be, does this thing have to be just for COVID? Because they said this would be really cool for our company. Because a lot of new company, a lot of companies, not new companies, but companies are starting to bring their employees back. Maybe half of them are working 2 days a week, and they're doing the stagger until they can figure out the parameters of everybody having the social distancing. So that's what they were looking at, that they thought would be cool and helpful for them to use SafeSite for.
Absolutely.
And is that how you plan to see using this going forward beyond, even though the people are getting vaccinated? What do you think is going to happen to your the way you do your operative job sites?
We've already talked about it with our superintendents, are mainly the ones that are pushing us for continuing to use this, and so we will, because it's very helpful when you put together your actual daily logs. because you look around and you say, okay, I had this many electricians, you ask the foreman on their site, but it ends up being a lot more accurate. People tend to walk in the door, they see the QR code, and they think, oh, I gotta safe site my way into this site. So you have more accuracy, to the point where I think it was last week, I got a notification 10 o'clock at night, someone was denied access to a site. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, why is anybody working on this job at 10 o'clock at night? It's a day job. So contacted our superintendent the next day, and it turns out that a group of workers, one group of our subcontractors, they had taken, one of them took a picture of the QR code, took it home, and they were all practicing on how to log in so that they wouldn't make so, we told them that's not the way they're supposed to do it. But first we thought, wow, is someone breaking into our site? Why are they going to really take the time to safe site their way in? That wouldn't be, but it was just, we got a laugh out of it anyways. So.
Tom, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that was great. I can't top that.
So, Tom, you showed a lot. If you were to talk about what you're thinking of from what are customers asking for? What does the next, say, 2-3 months look like from your perspective? What does the future hold for you from the product?
So the next big thing we're working on is actually, we're starting to have customers actually ask now that they want to have different visitor types come into the system. So for example, your own employee, you might want to ask different questions than a visitor or than a subcontractor. So the ability for that visitor when they check in to identify, whether the employee, the subcontractor, the delivery person, and then based on who they identify themselves as, the type of visitor, then they might be asked different contact information. Your own employees, you don't need certain things, but your subcontractors, you do. When they actually check in, the badge actually needs to have different instructions because they're a delivery person, right? They'll be told they need to go to some other gate to actually do a delivery as part of the process. So it's really about just again putting more control in the system to capture different visitor types, ask different questions of them is a big part of it. The other thing we've also noticed with the check-in and check-out capability is certain customers, they have max occupancy limits at their locations. And certainly if you're doing check-in, check-out, that does give you visibility to who is actually there kind of currently to make sure you're not exceeding any max capacity issues. And we think there are some things we can do there as well to do things like let you set up a max capacity per site, a number per site in our system. And then as that capacity starts to approach max capacity or even starts to exceed max capacity, that you could actually alert supervisors and safe officers to tell them that, hey, you've actually reached the max occupancy, at your location. You shouldn't be letting other people check in because you're in violation of, some occupancy rule. So those are the types of things that we do have in the queue. And we tend to do updates to the app every 2 to 3 or so weeks. And progressively, you'll see more announcements from us over the upcoming weeks as we start to bring in some of these additional capabilities.
Okay. Thank you. And come back to Sherry. You mentioned earlier, this helps you with better daily reports or daily logs. What does it mean for you or your company to have more accurate daily logs? Speak from your perspective, from your company's perspective, what does it mean? And are there things in the product, as you heard Tom mention some of the things that he's working on, are there things that you would like to see in the near future?
As far as the daily logs, that's helpful for us in just to have an accurate account. You always want to know how many people are on your job site. Back when COVID was very, very, when there was a lot of outbreaks on our job, what was helpful for us as far as the tracking of, checking into safe site to our daily logs is we had a subcontractor who tested positive. And of course, the subcontractor notified us and they said, but don't worry, this person wasn't on your job. So I hear the name and it rang a bell. So I pull up SafeSite for the day, and that person was on 2 different of our job sites. So then you look at, they answered all the questions. They knew they had COVID too, which was really bad. So then you look and it's like, oh, wow, this person, not only did they say they weren't on the site, but they answered all the questions. So that was very helpful. And that person no longer works on our site or for that company. But on the daily reports, it's helpful just if you have an accident with Cal OSHA, so you can have a record of who was on your job. Not that anybody ever wants to have an accident, but they do happen. And as far as what Tom is doing, I will say that SafeSite for us has been, I know we're a lot more proactive, I think, than other companies, because we didn't want to just use SafeSite just to say we had something that was working. We wanted to use it and make sure it was working for us. So we've asked them for a lot of changes, and they've done everything. It's benefited those other companies that are using this, but it's also been a big help to us. So they're very good at least from what we've seen, to make changes and everything, because everybody does benefit.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for the positive feedback. So again, the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I think we're also kind of in the last few minutes of the webinar. So Sherry, we'll start with you. Any parting thoughts, any feedback that you want to share with the community besides what you've already done?
No, just if there's anybody out there that's looking that isn't currently using SafeSite, I'm pretty sure that if you decide to go that route, you won't be disappointed.
Thank you. Tom?
I want to thank Sherry again for participating in the conversation today. Our product team is very focused on having an active dialogue with our customers to get the feedback and really make it a better solution. So I always just look forward to, those people have an interest in what we're doing, find out about what other things we can do to make it even better. So I want to thank everybody for joining today, and hopefully look forward to chatting with some of you somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and thank you, Sherry, for your presentation, the comments and the discussion. Thank you, Tom, for an excellent presentation and demo.